And I now give the floor to the representative of the Russian Federation.
Благодарю вас.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam President. We are grateful to Ms. Nakamitsu for her briefing. The tenor of the discussion in the Security Council on the topic of the chemical demilitarization of Syria is not in line with the real state of affairs. It is a derivative of consistent anti-Damascus stance taken by the Western members of the Council. The Syrian military chemical potential was destroyed a long time ago under the OPCW control. The organization in The Hague also confirmed that the last production facilities declared by Syria were destroyed in line with CWC. And we agree with the Secretary General of the UN when he says that it was an important step toward the implementation of Security Council Resolution 2118. The gaps and inconsistencies in the Syrian declaration have to do with the fact that this was carried out on the condition of very little time and against a background of very serious military conflict. Consequently, this was clarified fully in line with OPCW rules. Some issues are impossible to clarify anymore because they are too long-standing and they need to be closed. On other issues, the government of Syria has been regularly providing to OPCW the information they have, and this kind of an interaction is the only way of settling the outstanding questions. There is no foundation for the talk about that Damascus is allegedly saved something from the toxic chemicals. This is pure propaganda. Let me simply remind that the OPCW specialist has twice very thoroughly inspected the Scientific and Research Center in Barsa, and they found no trace of toxic chemicals there. In April of this year, this facility was destroyed by the missile strikes by the US, UK, and France on the pretext that they allegedly manufactured and stockpiled chemical weapons. But there were no chemical releases in the course of the attack. Nothing like that happened. And this shows very clearly that there is a major international deception carried out by those who perpetrated the aggression, following the pattern of the shameful incident with the Iraq weapons of mass destruction. The bureaucrats of OPCW, by the way, for some reason are not mentioning the fact that the center was destroyed as a result of bombardment. A characteristic feature of the conflict in Syria was a provocation carried out by the fighters from the illegally armed entities using toxic chemicals. For 5 years already, the same scheme is being used in order to discredit the authorities in Damascus and then carry out aggressive activity against Syria. And a very good service in staging this and creating the proper reaction is being provided by the pretend rescuers of the white helmets, who are living very well using Western money. And they even use children in their stagings. After the incident in Duma, this kind of scenario has been uncovered. We found those who participated in those filmings, and they did tell everything about this in The Hague. Currently, a new wave of threats is being unleashed against Syria. The supposed intention of Syria to use toxic weapons in Idlib is presented as fact. What comes to mind here is Agatha Christie's novel called A Murder is Announced, where the upcoming murder, including the murder's place and time, was something that was announced in a newspaper. And then the curious people came to the address stated, and where they were not disappointed in their expectations. And those people who claim today do not bother themselves with explaining why it is necessary for Damascus to gas peaceful inhabitants. And this is done against the conditions where Syria has already been twice bombed and new plans of aggressions are being nursed. You think that Damascus is inviting you to do this? Do you really think that the whole world is going to blindly believe what you're telling them? Damascus does not have chemical weapons, and nor do they have plans to use it. We consider such kinds of warnings as an invitation for terrorists to carry out a new staged chemical attack and accuse the chemical authorities of the same attack. This is not something that chemical authorities need, but the terrorists do need this very much because for them it is an opportunity to provoke an act of aggression against Damascus. We do know for a fact, and we have provided information on that to OPCW, we know that in a territory which is not controlled by Syrian authorities, chemical weapons were introduced and equipment in order to carry out provocative activities. That the fighters were trained, and the training was carried out by Western special services. That the white helmets, the outlines of them are already in Idlib, and in the province itself, several dozens of children have been kidnapped. At the same time, what we're witnessing is Syria is a military presence of key Western countries, and their officials are making aggressive statements. And we did mention this at the Security Council meeting on the 28th of August. And on this, we have a specific proposal, and this is a proposal to the American colleagues. Could you please voice the list of targets that, as is being said, Pentagon has determined for the strikes of the Troika? If, in your view, they are related to the stockpiling and the use of chemical weapons, well, then show respect for the UN Charter and convey them to OPCW in order to carry out the inspections that they're supposed to be carrying out. Since you blindly believe in the authority and the impartiality of the OPCW fact-finding mission, well, its expertise should allay your suspicions. Now, a few words about OPCW. We expect that the new Director General of the Technical Secretariat, Mr. Arias, that he will be able to channel the work of this organization to a normal pathway. After many remote investigations, its authority has suffered a serious blow. Another thing that undermined OPCW was the decision which provided the Technical Secretariat with a function of assigning responsibility for chemical weapons, which was pushed through by a minority of member states. It's not legitimate because it's not in line with the Chemical Weapons Convention goals, and we do not accept this decision. The only goal of this initiative is a purely political one: make sure that Syria and Russia are under international threat. And this was clearly visible in the parliamentary statement made by the UK Prime Minister Theresa May when she spoke on this Salisbury-Amesbury event on the 5th of September. Let's remember that continuing with the provocation will only lead to a new spiral of tension in the Near East, which is already has been very feverish because of the policy carried out by the Western countries, which leads to disunity. This is not just instability. This is also serious military conflicts with many victims amongst the peaceful inhabitants. It's hardly likely that your regional allies will benefit from it. There was a point in time where very questionable geopolitical games led to the flowering of terrorism. Today, as a result of similar adventures, what we're witnessing is a rise in chemical terrorism. It is worthy of note that the role of these countries in the political settlement of Syria, which they speak for so fervently, is not very noticeable. We recommend very highly to give up on hostility and to become included in peaceful efforts. I thank you for your attention.
I thank the representative of Russia, and I now